My name is Ryan, and I've never told this story publicly before. It happened in the winter of 2017 during a cabin trip in northern Wisconsin. There were 5 of us: me, my girlfriend Emma, my best friend Chris, his cousin Matt, and Matt's longtime friend Joel. Joel was the quiet one, not shy, just observant. He noticed things other people didn't. He also had a habit of wandering off on his own, which we used to joke about. The cabin belonged to Matt's uncle. No nearby neighbors, no cell service, just forest, snow, and silence. The first night was normal, cold but comfortable. We drank, talked, played cards. The wind outside was strong enough to rattle the windows, but it felt cozy in a way winter cabins usually do. The second day, we decided to hike. There was an old trail behind the cabin that cut through the woods and looped back around a frozen lake. Matt's uncle had warned him not to go near the lake in winter, said people used to avoid it even back when the area was settled. We didn't take that warning seriously. About an hour into the hike, Joel stopped walking. He was staring into the trees. I asked him what he was looking at. He said, "Does anyone else hear that?" We all went quiet. At first, I heard nothing. Then, very faintly, something like breathing. Slow, deep, too steady to be wind. Chris laughed and said Joel was messing with us, but Joel didn't laugh. He looked scared. We kept moving, but Joel stayed behind a bit, dragging his feet. When we reached the frozen lake, he stopped completely. The lake was massive, flat, covered in snow, so smooth it didn't look real. Joel walked toward it. I grabbed his arm and asked what he was doing. He turned to me and said something I'll never forget. "It knows I'm here." I asked him who it was. He just shook his head and pulled his arm away. We didn't stay long after that. The mood was ruined. We headed back to the cabin before dark. That night, Joel barely spoke. Around 2 a.m., I woke up because Emma was shaking me. She whispered, "Joel's not in his bed." We checked the cabin. The front door was unlocked. His boots were gone. We grabbed flashlights and went outside, calling his name. Snow was falling hard, covering tracks almost as soon as they were made. We found his footprints leading toward the lake. They stopped halfway across it. No hole, no cracks, just stopped. We stood there in the cold, yelling his name until our voices gave out. Eventually, we went back inside and waited for morning. Joel came back just before sunrise. He was standing in the doorway when we woke up. No jacket, no gloves, barefoot. His feet were red and cracked, but he didn't seem to feel it. Chris rushed to him, asking where he'd been. Joel looked at him and smiled. It wasn't Joel's smile. It was slow, stretched, like he was practicing it. "I went for a walk," he said. His voice sounded wrong, flat, like he was repeating words he didn't fully understand. We took him to the nearest hospital as soon as the roads cleared. The doctor said he should have died from exposure. They asked how long he'd been outside. Joel answered before anyone else could, "All night." After that, things got worse. Joel stopped sleeping. He would sit upright in bed, staring at the corner of the room like someone was standing there. Sometimes he'd whisper, not to us, to something we couldn't see. One night I heard him talking in the kitchen. I thought he was on the phone. When I went to check, he was standing in the dark, facing the wall. He said, "It doesn't like being ignored." I asked him what he meant. He turned his head toward me, but not his body, and he said my name in a voice that wasn't his. I backed away and locked myself in the bedroom until morning. We cut the trip short and went home, but Joel didn't get better. He started knowing things he shouldn't, private things, things none of us had ever said out loud. He told Chris about a car accident he'd been in as a kid, something only Chris and his parents knew. He told Emma about a nightmare she had when she was 8. He told me that something followed us back from the lake. The last time I saw Joel was 6 months later. He was thinner, pale, smiling that same wrong smile. Before I left, he leaned in and whispered something I still hear when winter comes. It doesn't need the lake anymore. 2 weeks after that, Joe disappeared. They never found him. Every winter, when the snow falls heavy and the nights get quiet, I think about that lake, and I wonder what noticed him first.
My name's Daniel, and this happened to me during the winter of 2021. At the time, I was living alone in a small rental house just outside a rural town in Minnesota. It wasn't completely isolated, but it was far enough from my neighbors that at night the area felt empty, especially in winter. That year, the snow came early and hard. By January, it felt like the world had narrowed down to just my house, the road, and endless white fields on either side. The night this happened, there was a severe snowstorm warning, heavy snowfall, freezing winds, and near zero visibility. I remember checking my phone before bed and seeing alerts telling people not to travel unless it was an emergency. Around 11:40 p.m., the power went out. That wasn't unusual for the area, but it still made the house feel different, smaller, quieter. I lit a few candles and decided to sleep on the couch in the living room, closer to the fireplace. The wind outside was loud enough that it rattled the windows. Snow hit the siding in waves. Every so often, the house would creak, settling under the cold. I eventually drifted off. I don't know how long I was asleep when I heard it. A knock. Loud, not aggressive, just slow. 3 knocks. To the darkness, listening. I told myself it was probably ice falling from the roof or something, hitting the door. Then it happened again. 3 knocks. Same rhythm, same slow pace. I checked the time on my phone. 12:26 a.m. No one should have been out in that storm. I stayed still, holding my breath. After a few seconds, I heard footsteps outside on the porch. Slow, heavy, crunching snow. That's when fear really set in. I quietly stood up and moved toward the window next to the front door, careful not to make any noise. I pulled the curtain back just enough to look outside. The porch light was off because of the power outage, but the snow reflected enough moonlight for me to see something standing on my porch. It looked like a person. They were facing the door, standing completely still. No coat hood up, no visible breath, just a dark figure against the white snow. I couldn't see their face. I whispered, "Hello?" without meaning to. The figure didn't react. Then, slowly, it raised its hand and knocked again. 3 knocks. I stepped back, my heart racing. My mind was scrambling for explanations. Maybe someone's car broke down. Maybe they needed help. But something felt wrong. Very wrong. I walked closer to the door and spoke louder this time. "Can I help you?" There was a long pause. Then I heard a voice. It sounded like a man's voice, but flat, emotionless. "I'm cold." That was it. I told them I was calling the police. I didn't actually have service, but I hoped it would scare them off. Instead, the figure leaned closer to the door. I heard their forehead touch the wood, and then they whispered right through the door, "I know you're awake." My blood went cold. I backed away until I hit the wall behind me. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to make any noise. I didn't want them to know where I was. The knocking started again. This time, it didn't stop at 3. It went on and on, slow, deliberate, like they had all the time in the world. After what felt like forever, it suddenly stopped. I waited. Minutes passed. The wind outside was the only sound again. I convinced myself they had left. Then, I heard it, knocking from the back door. Same rhythm, same slow pace. I stayed frozen on the floor all night, clutching a fireplace poker, listening as the knocking moved from door to door, window to window, circling the house, never rushing, never stopping for long, just reminding me they were still there. When the sun finally came up, the storm had passed. I worked up the courage to look outside. There were no footprints, not on the porch, not in the yard, not anywhere around the house. I moved out 2 weeks later. I still don't know who or what was knocking that night, but every winter, when storms roll in and the power flickers, I remember that voice. I know you're awake.
My name is Mark, and this happened in February of 2019. There were 4 of us: me, my friend Ethan, his younger brother Luke, and our longtime friend Aaron. We'd known each other for years and had gone hiking together plenty of times before. We weren't reckless and we weren't inexperienced. That's important to say, because what happened wasn't because we were careless. We chose a winter trail in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, remote but popular enough that we figured it would be safe if we stuck to the marked paths. The forecast showed cold temperatures but clear skies. When we arrived just after noon, everything felt normal. Snow was thick, but the trail was visible. The forest was quiet in that way winter forests usually are, muffled, still, peaceful. We hiked for about 2 hours before Ethan suggested we take a shortcut he'd read about online. It was supposed to reconnect with the main trail further ahead and save us time before dark. That was the first mistake. The moment we stepped off the trail, the forest felt different. Not dangerous, just wrong. The trees grew closer together, and the snow under our boots seemed untouched. No animal tracks, no signs of anything moving through there recently. The air felt heavier, like sound didn't travel properly. After about 15 minutes, Luke stopped and asked a simple question. "Do you guys hear that?" We all paused. At first, I thought he meant the wind, but there wasn't any. The forest was completely silent. No wind, no birds, no distant sounds at all. That silence pressed in on us. I remember feeling like we were being listened to. Aaron laughed nervously and said we were just psyching ourselves out, but his voice sounded too loud, like it didn't belong there. We kept walking. That's when we noticed something strange. We started seeing our own footprints ahead of us. At first, we thought we were looping around, but that didn't make sense. We hadn't turned back, and the prints were fresh, crisp edges, not filled with snow. Ethan checked his GPS. It showed us standing still, even though we were walking. That's when things shifted from uncomfortable to frightening. Luke pointed ahead and said, "Someone's there." Between the trees, about 50 feet away, stood a figure. It didn't move. It looked tall, too tall, and thin, almost stretched. It was the same color as the trees, blending in so well that if it hadn't been standing unnaturally straight, we might not have noticed it at all. We called out. No response. The figure didn't turn its head, didn't breathe, didn't react. Then, slowly, it took one step sideways and disappeared behind a tree. Not walked, slid. That's when Ethan said something I still think about. He said, "There's no footprints." He was right. There were no tracks leading to where it stood. Panic set in quietly. No one yelled, no one ran. We all just looked at each other, knowing the same thing without saying it. We needed to leave. We tried retracing our steps, following our footprints back, but after a few minutes, the prints stopped, just ended. Behind us, the forest looked exactly the same as it did ahead of us. Every direction felt wrong. Then we heard it. Footsteps. Slow, heavy, crunching snow, but not matching our pace. They were circling us, always just out of sight. Whenever one of us turned, the sound would stop, only to start again from somewhere else. Luke started crying quietly. He kept feeling like something was standing right behind him. At one point, Aaron whispered, "Don't turn around." I didn't ask why. We walked for what felt like hours, even though it couldn't have been more than 20 minutes. The light started fading too fast, like the sun was dropping straight down instead of setting normally. Then, all at once, the sounds stopped. The forest returned to normal. We burst out onto the main trail without realizing it, nearly tripping over the marker sign. The moment we saw it, all four of us broke down. None of us cared how that looked. We didn't hike back. We ran. Back at the car, none of us spoke for a long time. Later, we compared what we experienced. Here's the part that still keeps me up at night. Each of us described the figure differently. Different height, different shape, different position. But we all agreed on one thing. It never faced us. I don't hike off trail anymore, and none of us talked to Aaron, because when we made it back to town, he told us he heard whispering the whole time, calling his name. My name is Alex, and this happened to me 2 winters ago. I lived in a small town in northern Ontario, where snow covers the ground for months and the nights are long and unforgiving. We had just gone through an unusually cold spell, the kind where the air feels thick, like it pushes against your lungs every time you breathe. The snow was waist deep, and the wind howled most nights. That winter seemed different, almost alive. I worked nights at a remote logging facility about 15 miles outside town. Most of my shifts were quiet, sometimes too quiet. On this particular night, I had just finished my last job for the evening, checking motion sensors in the deep woods surrounding the facility. It was about 1:30 a.m., pitch black, and the temperature was well below freezing. I was driving my truck back toward the main building on a narrow, snow-packed road, surrounded by dense pines on both sides. My headlights barely cut through the darkness, the beam dancing across the snow like a searching eye. Everything was still, too still. Suddenly, my radio crackled with static. Just a brief burst, no voice, no words, the kind of static that makes your skin crawl. I tried to brush it off as interference with the weather, but something about it felt deliberate. I rounded a bend in the road when my headlights caught something in the snow. At first, I thought it was just a tree branch, until I saw the footprints. They were deep, uneven, and massive, larger than any boot tracks I'd ever seen. They led right up to the edge of the road, and then disappeared into the woods. I pulled over, my breath freezing on the glass. My mind told me it was probably just some hunter who lost his way, but something about those tracks didn't add up. Why weren't they in a straight path? Why did they look dragged in parts? And why were they huge? The hair on my neck stood on end. I got out of the truck to take a closer look. The snow crunched under my boots, loud in the otherwise silent night. I followed the prints toward the forest's edge, only a few feet into the trees when I felt it. A presence. A heavy, suffocating stillness, like someone or something was watching me. I nearly turned back, but then I heard it. First, just a whisper, barely audible over the wind, and then a soft breathing right behind me. I froze. At first, I convinced myself it was just the wind against the trees, but then the breathing grew louder, closer, deliberate. My heart was pounding so loud I thought it would break through my chest. I took a step back, and that's when I saw movement. A figure. Tall, lanky, hunched, standing just beyond the tree line.
Its outline was barely visible, but its eyes reflected the truck headlights like glowing embers. I tried to call out, but my voice died in my throat. I tried to move, but it was like my feet were glued to the snow. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, it vanished. I sprinted back to my truck, breath burning in my lungs. I slammed the door shut, locked it, and sat there shaking for what felt like forever. I didn't look back. The radio crackled again, that same static, and then silence. I started the engine and drove back toward the facility without stopping once. When I reached the lights of the building, I called my supervisor and told him I was coming in early. He asked why. All I said was, "I'm not comfortable out there anymore." I went back to that stretch of road a few days later, during daylight, with 2 colleagues. We searched the woods for any sign of those tracks, but nothing. No footprints, no broken branches, nothing. It was like the tracks and whatever made them were never there. I don't know what it was. A lost hiker? An animal? Something more otherworldly? All I know is what I saw, and I've told this story to people I trust. Every winter now, when the wind howls and the snow falls heavy, I remember that night, and I wonder what else is out there, just beyond the tree line, watching.